One ring to rule them all. One ring to find them. One ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. My first experience with the world of J.R.R. Tolkien was like most people's. Reading The Hobbit between the ages of 9 or 10 in short bursts before bed with my mother. I was always obsessed with fantasy books growing up. My room was decked out with unicorns in every corner. On the bedspreads, even on the walls, like the wallpaper, the books, everything was unicorn themed. It was a little much. I devoured books about mythical beings and monsters, about Pegasus and dragons, princes and princesses discovering hidden lands and embarking on epic quests with wizards and fighting for a better world. I believed in magic so wholeheartedly that I would cast spells with my cousins in the rain barrel beside my grandparents' shed. Everything could be turned into an adventure, and I was able to find the wonder in even the most mundane things. Fantasy still serves a much-needed escape and dose of imagination and creativity for me today. When I'm not deep into researching some obscure moment in ancient history, my nose is usually in a book about far-off lands filled with the fair folk and humans with supernatural abilities. And we wouldn't have the fantasy genre that we have today without the father of modern fantasy himself, J.R.R. Tolkien. Hi friends, welcome back to Dig It with Raven. You might be wondering what we're doing discussing fantasy on an archaeology channel. It's a very valid question. Well, it turns out that there's a rumor that an archaeological find of a cursed ring might have inspired the One Ring in The Lord of the Rings and pushed J.R.R. Tolkien to write The Hobbit. Let's get into it. Tolkien was known to have gotten a great deal of inspiration for the world of Middle-earth from the English landscape. His time living in and around Birmingham, particularly the small village of Sarehole, brought the Shire to life. And he compared parts of the Malvern Hills in the West Midlands to the White Mountains between Rohan and Gondor. Some people also speculate that the illuminated clock tower at the University of Birmingham, which can be seen across the city, was the inspiration for the ever-watchful Eye of Sauron. But what about the rings? Especially the One Ring, which Bilbo finds in The Hobbit, the same one that sets Frodo off on a perilous quest to save Middle-earth. Where did Tolkien get his inspiration for that? It's often assumed that Tolkien was inspired by Richard Wagner's 4-part opera, The Ring of the Nibelungs, more popularly known as his Ring Cycle. Wagner began writing this musical epic almost a century before The Hobbit was published in 1937. The story of the Ring of the Nibelungs revolves around a magic ring forged by the Nibelung dwarf out of gold he stole from the Rhine maidens in the River Rhine. The ring grants the owner the power to rule the world and is first stolen by Wotan, the chief of the gods. This then sets off a tumultuous series of events that spans generations and sees the ring exchange many hands and corrupts those who possess and seek it out until it is finally returned to the Rhine maidens. In the process, the gods and Valhalla, the home of the gods, are destroyed. Despite the similarities we can see between Wagner's Ring and Tolkien's, especially in regards to its power and its ability to corrupt, Tolkien himself actually went on record and wrote to his publisher that, quote, both rings were round, and there the resemblance ceases. But there's another ring, housed inside a grand Tudor mansion that was once an important palace, surrounded by acres of wildlife-rich gardens, meadows, and wood. A ring with a potential curse attached to it that has been rumored to have planted a seed inside Tolkien's mind that 1 year later led him to putting pen to paper and begin drafting Bilbo's journey there and back again to the Lonely Mountain. Sometime during the 5th century BCE, near the Roman Britain town of Silchester, that was originally the center of the Iron Age kingdom of the Atrebates tribe from the late 1st century BCE, someone lost a gold ring. The town was located north of Basingstoke in Hampshire, England, and after the Roman conquest of 43 CE, it became a large and important town called Caleva Atrebatum. The city thrived until it was abandoned in the 6th or 7th century, and unlike many Roman towns in southern Britain, it was never reoccupied or built over. Because of this, Silchester is one of the best preserved Roman towns in Britain. This is also probably why such a valuable gold ring lay buried in the ground until it was found by a farmer ploughing his field in 1785. Like Deagol, who saw a glint in the seabed, the farmer perhaps caught a glittering glimpse in his field that made him stop in his tracks. The gold ring is shaped as a 10-sided hoop with a square bezel attached to it that was likely intended to be used as a signet. It's quite a large ring, measuring 25 millimeters in diameter and weighing 12 grams, which suggests that it was made to be worn on a man's finger, possibly on a thumb over a glove. Pretty big. The ring itself is an important example of late Romano-British craftsmanship. Both the bezel and the hoop of the ring have Latin inscriptions carved on them. The bezel possesses an engraved profile of a bust facing left, surrounded by a Latin inscription which says Venus, who was the Roman goddess of love and victory. But the ring also possesses links to early Christianity, as the hoop's inscription reads, Senicianus, live well in God. The ring has been dated to circa 350 to 450 CE, and at this time, Roman and other pagan religions and Christianity existed side by side. So even though the two inscriptions appear to be somewhat contradictory, the ring may have belonged to someone who perhaps converted to Christianity and used this ring as a symbol of this transition. Or perhaps this ring belonged to someone who was attempting to practice both faiths at the same time. After the ring was discovered, it was shown at the Society of Antiquaries in London on January 12, 1786 by Lord Arden. After this, the ring all but disappears, perhaps to the Misty Mountains, not to be seen again for 100 years. In the 1880s, the gold ring of Senicianus then re-emerged in the collection of the Shute family, a wealthy family that was once prominent in British politics who had come to own a historic estate not far from the Roman site of Silchester called the Vine. The Vine was originally a cluster of medieval buildings that were transformed into a Tudor palace between 1500 and 1520. Challoner Shute bought the Vine in 1653, and the family remained the owners of the estate until it was given to the National Trust in 1956. It's not known how the ring came to the Vine, but it was included in the written history of the building in 1888. The rediscovery of the ring coincided with the archaeological discovery of a lead plaque that was confirmed to be a Roman curse tablet at the Temple of Nodens at the Roman site in Lydney Park, Gloucestershire, about 80 miles away from the Vine. Nodens was a Celtic healing god worshipped by ancient Britons, and the temple to this deity at Lydney Park was an important place of worship and pilgrimage throughout history. Written on the tablet was a plea from a Roman man named Silvianus, asking the god Nodens to return a ring to him that was stolen by Senicianus, placing a curse of ill health on the man who stole this precious item. The translation from Latin reads, "To the god Nodens. Silvianus has lost his ring and given half its value to Nodens. Among those who are called Senicianus, do not allow health until he brings it back to the Temple of Nodens." Archaeological work at the main temple building at Lydney has exposed what has been interpreted as a large dormitory for sick pilgrims. Is it then possible that a sick and recovering Silvianus was sleeping in the temple when Senicianus snuck up and slipped the ring off his finger? Soon after the discovery of the cursed tablet was announced, a connection was made by some to the gold ring held in the collection at the Vine. Challoner Wiget Shute, who was writing his history of the Vine in the late 1880s, was fascinated by this possible link between ring and tablet, and he had both items drawn and included in his book. This is also probably the same time that a plaster copy of the cursed tablet was made and brought into the Vine's collection. While a connection between the ring and cursed tablet was being made, there was still no consensus on if this theory held any truth. The matter was debated well into the 20th century, as we have evidence of Challoner Wiget's Shute's son, Sir Charles, writing to archaeologist and art historian Jocelyn Toynbee, who in the mid-20th century was the leading British scholar in Roman art. Toynbee later wrote about it and argued that perhaps the owner of the ring was a Christian who equated his faith with love, and therefore chose Venus as his signet to be an appropriate symbol of his religion. The leading question that cast this connection in doubt is, of course, if the Ring of Senicianus is indeed the one referred to on the curse tablet, then why does it have Senicianus' name on it instead of Silvianus? To contradict this, some have suggested that maybe the engraving with Senicianus' name was made to protect him from any curse that would befall him from this act of thievery. If it was, boy did Senicianus know the guy who he stole the ring from to a T. I really do hope that it protected him, regardless if it was to ward off a curse or just to have something meaningful at hand. Maybe it was Silvianus who was a pagan and had the Venus signet inscribed, and perhaps Senicianus was Christian and wanted to imbue his faith onto the ring once he took ownership of it. Of course, these are all just romantic musings and not based on any real fact. When looking practically at what we have, the distance between the two sites of Lydney and Silchester, and the fact that the ring was found near the major Roman settlement of Cavella Atrebatum, where it could have been made, it's rather unlikely that the curse tablet and ring are connected in any way. Unless, of course, a pilgrim made a very, very long journey, which they are known to make. Even without this link, the ring is still a site and a very important object for understanding late Roman Britain and the political and religious shifts that were taking place in the 5th century CE. The bezel iconography is possibly the only one like it that we know of in the Roman world. The inscribed face is quite dramatic and exaggerated. It appears almost half human, half animal. To me, it's giving King Richard from Disney's Robin Hood. But it also may be something Ursine with it. I'm not quite sure. Whoever it is, this is definitely not a depiction of the goddess Venus. The hoop inscription is also missing the O on the word Deo if we're going to be grammatically correct in Latin. And this could be a spelling error a la a bad tattoo, or perhaps the bezel was added after the fact and covered up the O. We do have other examples of rings from Roman Britain with similar inscriptions that would have been worn by Christians as displays of their faith, so this type of jewelry wasn't uncommon. Now, what would make a mysterious ring with a potential curse attached to it a possible candidate for the one ring that held the power to destroy all of Middle-earth and corrupt all those who bore it? Well, archaeologist Sir Mortimer Wheeler, who directed later excavations at the site of Lydney Park, was also aware of the connection between the ring and the curse tablet. In 1929, he asked J.R.R. Tolkien, who was then a professor of Anglo-Saxon at Oxford University, for his assistance to work on the etymology of the name Nodens. Remember, Tolkien was an accomplished philologist, which is very prominently reflected in the multiple languages that he created for The Lord of the Rings. I tried to read his article on Nodens, and it was very much outside of my area of expertise. It's noted that Tolkien visited the Temple of Nodens on a number of occasions, and it is somewhat believed by some that he would have been made aware of the existence of the ring when he was working on this article about the name Nodens, as the god is mentioned in that curse tablet from the site. Furthermore, the area around the temple was known as Dwarf's Hill, and was believed to have been an Iron Age fort that contained mines. I really hope I'm speaking to the right audience here, where I don't have to go into dwarves and mines and Tolkien. But if you want some further context, just read The Hobbit or watch the movies. The Hobbit movies aren't as good as the Lord of the Rings movies. Pick your poison. Within a year of beginning his work on Nodens, Tolkien began writing The Hobbit. Coincidence? Probably, to be honest. It's, again, likely one of those number 23 situations where if you look hard enough for a connection, you're gonna find it. The National Trust has explicitly stated on their website that the Ring of Senicianus had been wrongly identified as the inspiration for J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings trilogy. Tolkien has never explicitly stated if there was any specific inspiration for the One Ring. Perhaps it was an amalgam of all these tiny moments in life that go unnoticed but amount to something monumental in our subconscious. Maybe it was a genuine idea sprung forth organically from the master of world building himself. Maybe the Ring of Senicianus was just a ring, a symbol reflecting a rapidly changing time in Britain when Roman power was beginning to wane. But what do you think? Does the Ring of Senicianus resemble the One Ring? Could this potentially cursed object have lit a spark of imagination for Tolkien? Let me know in the comments below. Stay dirty, my friends.